going to start this again. Hello and welcome to the August 2023 episode of the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast. My name's Leslie and this is a podcast about knitting, crochet, spinning, yarny, fibrey stuff, recorded on the south coast of the UK. Thank you for being here. Whether it's your first time here or you're back for more, you're very welcome and I'm very grateful. Cheers. It's called the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast because I have a lot of yarn, but clearly not quite enough. I tend to buy single skeins or small amounts of colours that I'm drawn to, and I rarely have enough of the same yarn for a single item, particularly a garment. So there's a lot of striping, blocks, I would say colour work, but I don't do a lot of that. But a lot of putting yarns together that wouldn't necessarily go, because they're not even usually from the same manufacturer or the same dyer, or even the same type of fibre, but they go together if they're roughly the same weight. This originally started as a record of me working down my stash and getting from 2 cupboards down to 1. I'm now trying to get it from 2 cupboards and boxes down to 2 cupboards. I haven't been buying a lot, the odd bit every now and again, but generally I am a yarn magnet and I'm not at all ungrateful for this. My himself, when he goes away, quite often gets yarn for me as a souvenir. People give me stuff, and again, not ungrateful. So although it's not quite enough yarn, it is the ever-increasing stash podcast. Actually, that would be a good name, but we're too late now. We've got a make-along running. This is the Craft for Someone Else make-along. It started in April. It runs until the end of October, I think I said. Yeah. And the name is self-explanatory. It's anything you're making that's for someone else. So this could be a gift for birthday or other celebrations. It could just be because they're your friend or your relative type of item. It could be a charity make, whatever you'd like it to be. And it's any yarn craft. So knitting, crochet, if you're spinning yarn that you're then giving someone the skein of spun goodness, that all is included. Entry is on Ravelry. I know that not everyone can use Ravelry, so if you find it's not for you, please email me the entry. My email address is notquiteenoughyarn@gmail.com and I will add it to the Ravelry threads. We've got 2 threads on Ravelry. There's a Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast group, 2 threads in there. One is a finished object thread, and that's a no chatter thread. That's just simply a place to put a photograph of your FO. There is also a chatter thread, and you're welcome to put your FO, your work in progress, your yarn choices, your inspiration, whatever you like in there. And in that thread there's the opportunity for people to comment. You can ask for advice. Do you think it should be this or that kind of thing. And people can ask questions about your yarns, your patterns, and praise your yarny delight. So those are the threads on Ravelry. Like I say, it runs until the end of October. At the end of September, I will draw a prize for all entries during the quarter. And there'll be a pattern prize drawn from the chatter thread and a physical prize drawn from the finished object thread. And then at the end of October, or it'll probably be into November realistically when I draw the prize to get everything in, that will be a prize, again, pattern prize on the chatter, physical prize on the main, and there'll be prizes drawn from the whole period of the thread, which started in April. I normally record throughout the month. Been a bit lax this month. It's currently the 20th of August as I record this, but I haven't finished much, so there hasn't been a lot to show you. So I record throughout the month and then just put the pieces together and post on the last weekend of each month. I also do a weekly vlog. That's more updates of life, the universe and everything, as you know, whatever's happening in my world. And that goes up every Friday. I think that's all the admin. So let's talk about what I'm wearing. Ta-da! Yes, this is the total output of finished objects this month, a pair of mittens. These are for my father. Those who've been watching a while and those who watch the vlog know that at the end of last year my father had a fall. He's now of an age where he doesn't fall anymore, he has a fall. And he did some damage which resulted in him being in various hospitals, including the Spinal Injury Centre for the UK, Stoke Mandeville. He was there from March until earlier this month. So he's now home, thankfully. He has found that the tips of his fingers feel cold. And he has some gloves that he's been wearing, but I said I would make him some mittens. And these are they. His first week home I spent with him, and I was kind of hoping to get a pair of mittens knitted in that time, but time was not on our side. Just a very, very busy period, a lot of adjusting to do, a lot of kind of getting things set up, meetings and that sort of thing. So so I only got one mitten done and the cuff of a second, so I've now finished the second. And when choosing what mitts to make, I prefer to make gloves and mittens flat. I realise that makes me unusual. Most people prefer to work in the round. I just prefer flat. I don't get on with double pointed needles, so I tend to magic loop or use two circulars. And with very small circumferences like thumbs and fingers, it's just easier for me to work them flat and sew them up. I don't dislike seaming particularly. I'm not saying I'm especially neat or good at it, but I don't mind doing it. So I just thought I would make the mittens flat. That would be easier and quicker for me. I was then thinking about patterns, and I went to my patterns, and I've got an old double knitting weight one there. But talking with my dad, he wanted something fairly lightweight, so I thought a 4-ply or a fingering would be better. So I had a look online, because I didn't have any patterns in my collection in my library for 4-ply worked flat, and I found a pattern by Drops. This is a free pattern called the Grey Parade mittens. Now these are actually worked in garter stitch, which makes sense because they're worked flat. I didn't do garter stitch, I did stocking stitch, because I can't possibly follow a pattern as instructed. It's just not in my makeup. Now I wanted just a regular plain stocking stitch mittens, and I know there are other patterns, but I found these, worked flat, did the job. So like I say, it's a free pattern from Drops. I followed it pretty much exactly, except I did pearl rows instead of every row knit. There we go. That's the other thing. Don't mind purling either. I'm of an age and vintage where the first knitting patterns I used, and most knitting patterns I used for many years, were worked flat and in pieces. So purling is as routine to me as knitting, and sewing things up holds no terror. So that was what I went for. Had a look in my stash. Because these are for my dad, I knew that he wouldn't want any of my bright and shiny sock yarns. Pretty though they are, I felt they probably wouldn't be quite what he was after. He would just want something very plain, very functional. And this was some Bramwell fine DK that I was given, was it last year? I was given a lot of cones, and this was one of them. I'd used quite a bit of it in a blanket for my sister-in-law for Christmas, and there was some left over, so made the mittens out of that. It's 100% acrylic. Again, a deliberate choice because I knew that my father would want to be able to just put these in the washing machine, not have to think about them. I have plenty of this, so I may well make other pairs. I'm going to put them in the post to him because I'm not going to see him for a week or so. So I'm going to put them in the post with a little note saying, tell me what you want changed for the next lot, because he might want a longer cuff. Or he tried the one on that I'd finished when I was there and it seemed to fit okay. And I think the second one is near enough the same size, so we'll go with that. But he might want them to be a little wider. He might want a bit more movement in his hands. The thumb might be, you know, whatever he wants changed, I can change for the next one. So I've kept hold of the pattern, which I don't normally do. I normally have scribbled over them so much that I put them in the recycling when I'm done. But I've kept hold of this one, so I've got my row counts and that sort of thing. If he wants exactly the same again, he can have another pair. If he wants alterations made, that can be done. But this is the only FO I've got so far this month, which is this pair of mittens for my dad. The reason why I haven't got much else done in the way of finished objects is I've been working pretty solidly on the test knit that I'm doing for Jacqueline Sislak. And it's a new sweater called the Chroma Pullover. It's in different colour blocks, so perfect for me and my way of buying and using yarn. The reality is, and I don't feel good about this, I am not going to get done in time for the deadline. So I have emailed, offered my apologies, offered to buy the pattern, because when it's a test knit you get a free pattern. I'm happy to buy the pattern when it's released, because I didn't do this to get a free pattern, I did this to do the test knit, but I'm just not going to get done in time. And that's a shame. But the reality is I just haven't got time. I spent most of yesterday knitting on it, and judging by how long it took me to do the bit that I completed yesterday, it's just not going to get done. I'm back at work. Time is a finite resource, as we know. I may hopefully have it done by the end of the month, and whether it's done or partially done, you'll see it later on in the podcast. But I am disappointed with myself that it's not going to be finished in time for the deadline. It's just the situation we're in. It's disappointing, but I can't do more than I'm doing, so that's that. So the next section will follow. That may be the sweater or whatever else is going on. I'm going to get these in the post so that my father can wash the gloves he's been wearing for the last few days and have a change. I offered to make him gloves, but he said he would prefer mittens. If he wants to take them off in a hurry, you know, if he needs to suddenly blow his nose or something like that, he felt mittens would be quicker to take on and off. So I'll get these in the post to him so he's got them, and then we'll crack on with the next project. Cheers. As we know, this podcast is called Not Quite Enough Yarn. Even Heidi's disagreeing with me now. And I'm going to bring you an episode of the semi-regular sub-series, Yarn I've Acquired. Mai himself, who is a sweetheart, went to Ireland. He is a big fan of an Irish punk band called Stiff Little Fingers. And when I say he's a big fan, he went to see them in Cork, Dublin and Belfast, 1 gig each night. As they toured, so did he. He travelled by train and plane, not by tour bus, but the principle's the same. Because he was flying over to Ireland with just hand luggage, although I joked that yarn squashes up very small and could be squished into a suitcase without a problem, my expectations were zero. But he found a yarn shop in Cork, and they gave him a bag. So it's Yarn Vibes, a uniquely Irish yarn made from the fleece of sheep reared in Ireland. So it's all 100% Irish yarn, Irish wool rather. And I will put their website on the notes below. Sorry, that was almost a sentence. He said it's quite a big place. they've got a colour thing here of what they offer, and it is very much using Irish sheep, Irish wool, and keeping it local, or keeping it national. So. Oh, do you know we're online too? Yes, well, I'm about to put the link in the notes below, so yes, we do. So he bought me 2 skeins of yarn. He said there was a lot in there. He nearly bought some double knitting weight yarn, but he felt the texture of that, or the one that he picked up, was quite rough. He knows that I like a soft, squishy yarn. This is rustic to an extent. I mean, I wouldn't make a scarf or a cowl out of it, but it's not so rough that you feel you couldn't have it as a sweater. You know, it's clearly proper wool, none of your superwash. I love superwash, I'm not being disparaging about it. But no, it is very much wool, but it's not one of those wools that you just are feeling will, you know, you just feel will hurt your hands to work on and so forth. So he got me 2 skeins, they're both sport weight. We have 300 meters per 100 grams. And this one is called Glen Sea Medium, and it tells me it's from Carrick-on-Suir in County Tipperary. So lovely blues and greens here, absolutely lovely. This has a label on it which tells the origin. This one doesn't have that label, but it's in the colour Inis, I-N-I-S, and lovely purples. My camera tends to make things a bit cooler in colour. This is kind of softer, where the pinks are coming up quite bright. These are kind of deeper pinks. So very pretty yarns. Not sure what I'm going to do with them yet, but I like them very much. Very good colours choices from him, as always. He does choose colours well. I give him full credit for that. Yeah, so that was very kind of him. Like I say, completely unexpected. No nagging from me involved. Maybe that's the answer. But then where's the fun? Yeah. So yes, that was very kind of him to find me yarn. I've also been spinning, and I finished plying this yesterday, so it's still on the bobbin at the moment. I'll put a picture here to show it more clearly. This is from a bat that I started spinning last month. I have been spinning a little bit every day whilst watching Barbara of the Flame and Fibre podcast. She puts up a daily vlog, and I spin while I'm watching her podcast. So if she only chats for 5 minutes, I only do 5 minutes spinning. If she chats for nearly 20 minutes, that's how much I do, and that's kind of how I'm working it. And just doing that little bit every day is working for me. I like it. So I had this bat. I can't tell you anything about it because it was a gift from my sister-in-law, either last Christmas or the Christmas before, or possibly a birthday, can't remember. That's very naughty, but very pretty bat. I'll put a picture here of the bat when I opened it out. Now I was a little concerned that I was going to make a very muddled, muddy yarn, having done that before. All colours when added together go to brown, and I didn't want to make mud. So as I was spinning it, I was basically slightly stripping out the colours so that I could have stretches of colour. So they would change because of the different colours within the bat, but I was trying to keep the colours fairly distinct. Did this as a classic 3-ply, so split the bat into 3, spun 3 singles and then plied them together. And I'll again show you a different photograph showing the yarn. It has a sort of slightly barber pole effect when I plied it because we've got 3 colours at any given time. Sometimes you'll have more intensity of colour. If you've got 2 of the teal and 1 of the purple, 1 of the red, say, then it'll be more teal. You know, it varies as it goes along, which means I am very much looking forward to knitting with this. Quite often with my hand spun, I'm not quite sure what to do yet or how to use it, but this, I really want to see how it knits up. So one of the things I'm going to do, add this to my to-do list, is make myself a pair of fingerless gloves. So I'm going to use the same mitten pattern that I used for my father's mittens, but I'm not going to close the top off. What I'm essentially going to do is split this yarn in half. Do that by yardage, because as it's hand spun there'll be some inconsistency, so weighing it won't necessarily guarantee half of the skein, if you see what I mean. So I'm going to split this in half. I know I could do 2 at a time, but that's faff. I don't do faff. So split this into 2 balls and make mittens. The idea being that when I get to here, I will then change from stocking stitch to ribbing, and I will just keep going until I run out of yarn. Now if I run out of yarn kind of here, because I don't know how many meters I've got of this yet, then I'll probably add in another yarn, something of a similar colour, and do a rib from there. If I've got a lot, and it means I've got a very long rib, then I'll go to about here, one that I can fold over when I need to, or fold up when my hands aren't being used. So that's the plan, because I am really keen to see how this will knit up. So, hand spun. Yay! Not sure what else to say about that. I don't know what the fibres are. There are some white pieces in here, and certainly when I was spinning it, it felt like they were a silkier yarn, possibly silk, possibly some sort of silk waste. They certainly had a very different feel to some of the other fibres. There's a little bit of sparkle in here. I think someone just had a lot of fun putting it back together, getting some of their favourite colours and just putting it all in one place. So thank you to them, whoever they were. Thank you to my sister-in-law and family for buying me the gift. And thank you to you for watching as I talk about it. This summer I haven't done a huge amount of knitting because of travelling to hospitals and so forth, but that does mean I've been spending a lot of time listening to audiobooks. And I know books aren't for everyone, but a lot of podcasters do talk about their books, and I'm always interested to hear what they're reading, so hopefully you are too. If not, skip forward, it's fine. A couple of recent reads that may be of interest. The first was 3 books by Ambrose Parry. Now, Ambrose Parry is not a single author, as one might expect, but actually 2 authors. It's Chris Brookmyre, who is a best-selling writer of thrillers and stuff, and I believe the other writer is his wife. She's an anaesthetist, Marissa Heitzman, and they write historical crimes based in Edinburgh, so kind of Victorian era, based in Edinburgh. I'll be honest, I am not good when it comes to descriptions of particularly births and the main characters work with an obstetrician, a gynecologist, so there are some birth descriptions which I did skip over. They add colour to the text, but they don't add to the plot as far as I could see, so that was fine to just plus 30 seconds, plus 30 seconds, plus 30 seconds, or, you know, half a page if you're reading hard copy. Quite dark, quite brutal in places, but if you like a murky, gothic, Victorian murder, entertaining. Not the biggest plot twists. I think of the 3 books I've read, I guessed all 3, but it kind of didn't matter. So there were The Way of All Flesh, The Art of Dying, and A Corruption of Blood. And there was also released this year a novella called The Spendthrift and the Swallow, which I also read. And I just see here there's actually Voices of the Dead, a 4th book, 4th full-length novel. So I shall be adding that to my wish list. But yeah, quite dark, quite gothic-y, a little bit gruesome in places. So if you are more a cosy crime reader, this may not be for you, but it's not really bad. I mean, I'm not a fan of kind of, you know, slasher movies and those types of books either, so not really bad, but quite gritty, shall we say. But I found them very entertaining. So that's the first of the books that I've read. Now the second, or the first author, The most recent book I've read, completely different, and this is called Black Buck, and it's a novel by Matteo, I hope I pronounce this right, Ascaripour, and it's a satire about sales in New York, sales, business, commerce in New York. Quite entertaining, quite strong language in it, so if you don't like to hear strong language, you won't like it. But very interesting, not always comfortable, because it deals with racism, it deals with some of the difficulties that people experience if they're a minority in the workplace. But very, I thought, well done. Some of the reviews I was reading said, oh, it gets a bit slow in the middle, it gets a bit muddled in the second half. Personally, I didn't find that. I really enjoyed it. Quite a fast-paced book. Not the sort of setting that I would normally read, but I really enjoyed it. I thought the characterisation was good. Yeah, just made me smile in that kind of wry smile, oh yeah, kind of way. Not that I've ever been in that environment working, but you kind of get a sense that this is based on a fair amount of personal experience. So, yeah, so a couple of books, or a couple of authors rather. Very different, but it's nice to try different things. And I have found generally, since I've been listening to audiobooks rather than buying books or going to the library and getting hard copy books, it has expanded the range of stuff I read. I never used to read a lot of thrillers or crime, now I do. Oh, talking of thrillers and crime, the latest Lisa Jewell is out, and that is called None of This Is True. I've only just started that one. Big fan of Lisa Jewell. Her first published books were more the kind of chick lit genre, kind of romantic fiction, young girls around London, that type of style. But I always loved her characterisation. Her books, although they, on one level, they're quite light. There's nothing wrong with light, you know. But I found the characters really stayed with me, and that's what I've always liked about her writing. Now she has moved more into kind of thrillers, crime, mysteries, and again that strong characterisation comes through. So very much enjoying the latest. I'm only a very short time in, so I don't know where it's going yet, but I'm looking forward to carrying on with it. And gotta love a book. I tend to listen to them when I'm either walking the dog or driving, so I tend to reserve knitting for podcasts, if you see what I mean, or podcasts for knitting. But a few there that may or may not be of interest. Cheers. Hello lovelies. Now normally when I'm sitting in this corner we're having a roundup of whips. This month it's a roundup of whip. Told you it'd be a short one. I haven't had as much knitting time as I'd hoped. So this meant that I had to let the designer know that I wouldn't finish their test knit within the deadline, but I'm still knitting it. And this is the Chroma pullover by Jacqueline Sislak. The pattern is actually out now. I'll link it below if you're a Ravelry user. I think she's got her own website as well, so I will link that. I'll put the designer's picture in here so you can see what it should look like. And you can see why it would appeal to someone who knits the way I do, with different colours and so forth. It is a very oversized sweater, which means it's taken a long time because you're dealing with a big number of stitches. I knew that when I took it on, just didn't anticipate how much time would be taken up with other things. So not finished, hopefully will be in the next week or so. But here is my progress so far. So you can see I've got red at the bottom, and this is the red that I used in the sweater I made with lots of different reds a couple of months ago. So this is James C. Brett, I think. My main colour here, this beige, pale brown, whatever you want to call it, is Rowan Pure Life. And I mentioned this last month or in one of the weekly vlogs because the colourway is Ivy and I didn't understand why, because I would expect that to be green. But a viewer very kindly pointed out that Pure Life was a natural dyed range and Ivy is probably what they used to dye the yarn rather than the colour they were trying to produce. So that makes more sense. So I have the front done here and I'm this far up the back. I started one of the pockets because I had some car knitting that I needed to do and I wanted to take something small rather than a big project, so I thought I'd start the pocket. And this is Perrin Yarns, which is a Cornish dyer, and this is in a ball like this rather than in my usual cake because I started another project with this a while ago, probably a couple of years ago now. Gigi of Gigi Made It designed a wrap with a cable, and it was offered as a make along when it first came out and I started to join in, and I thought I'd be clever, which is always a mistake. I did my wrap in black. The original was a single colour one, but I was doing contrast cables. So it had cables and bobbles and I was doing them in that orange colour. It drove me to distraction because I just didn't enjoy knitting. Now I've done contrast cables before. You basically do them like stranded knitting. And I think that was part of my problem. Because it was a wrap, I knew the underside was going to look very different to the front. Now I don't mind if things aren't completely double-sided, but this you'd have the floats hanging at the back and that sort of thing, which I could have realised would be the case, but it was when I actually saw it that I thought, I'm not sure I'm going to use this item, and it was driving me a little bit to distraction to make it, so I pulled that back. So that's what that orange yarn is. And the other contrast colour I'm going to use is the Manos de Uruguay or del Uruguay, not sure, silk blend, which I think I showed you last month because I'd started to make some crochet mittens in this and decided to change the yarn that I would use for that project and to put this into the sweater instead. So those are my colours, and hopefully next month you'll see it finished. So it's an oversized sweater with pockets. Jacqueline Sislak has done two versions, a 2-colour and a 4-colour. I was going for the 4-colour, as you can see. The more I knit it, the more I think this could be a many colour. This could be striped, this could be intarsia and colour block it that way and that sort of thing. I still could do that. As I'm where I am in the making of it, I think I'm just going to stick with what I originally planned and go with that. But it is a very blank canvas, so you could use colours as you see fit. So I think that's all the knitting, because that really is the only project I've been working on. And you can see that it is, if I hang it upside down for a moment, you can see that it is a lot of knitting because it is so oversized, which is going to make it a very cosy, snuggly sort of jumper, and I will very much enjoy wearing it. But it just means it's a lot of knitting on the way. So I've got another 20 rows to do on the back, I think, before a bit of shoulder shaping. Yeah, just under 20 rows. Then the sleeves, finish the pockets, and then do the neckline. So certainly I've done a lot of the construction of it, a lot of the knitting, just not enough to have finished it yet. That's it for my roundup of whips, as there is only the one. Soon be the end of this, and it will be a short one. Cheers. Hello lovelies, I'm back now in the editing suite. This room has many names. It's my office. I mean, it is my office, it's where I do my work. It's my craft room, it's where the yarn lives, and it's today the editing suite. One thing I forgot to say about the test knit, and possibly another reason why it was taking a while, I made it a little longer than the original pattern. The original design is quite cropped. I had enough of the red to go another inch or so longer, so that's what I've done. So the designer was very good, happy with sort of a few modifications, guided as to what would be considered a modification and what would be a redesign, which is fair enough. But I felt that was acceptable within her guidelines. So that's that. And I've just finished the first pocket while I was editing. So this is the orange one in the Perrin yarns, and I've just started the silk blend for the second. But I think that's about it. I think last month I said, hopefully next month I'll have more knitting. I lied. I lied like a cheap watch. I said that once before and someone said that their phrase was lied like a cheap toupee, which I rather like. So that's it for this month. Thank you for being here. See you on Friday if you watch the vlogs. See you at the end of September if you watch the podcast only. Don't forget the make along at the end of September. Probably early into October. No, let's do it at the end of September. I will do the draw for the second quarter of the make along. So if you've got something that you'd like to add to the chatter thread, or it's finished and you just haven't put it on the finished object thread yet, do so. And the final September weekend is it's 30th and the 1st of October. I'm probably going to go with the 30th for the date of the September podcast. So I will draw for the prizes the latter part of the week leading up to that weekend. So please do add your entries if you'd like to. It's great to see what people are making, and knitters are very generous people. So we've got a lot of charity knits in there. We've got a lot of gifts. Things that have taken a fair amount of time. You know, it's not people giving of their time lightly, and it's very inspiring to see. So that's the make along. What does September hold? More of the same, I think. Nothing too exciting, but anything that does happen I will report in the weekly vlogs. Thank you for being here. Happy knitting, happy crafting. I hope that whatever September brings, you are well, that the weather treats you kindly. I know there are parts of the world that have just been through horrendous times recently, so I hope that you are relatively unscathed, maybe able to make a good recovery if you have had some damage. Wish you all the best. Thanks for being here. Enjoy your crafting, and see you at the end of September. Cheers everyone. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.